if you have your own Bible, well, I'm not sure we have it up here or not, but James 5 is what we're looking at today, verse 7 beginning. And we're looking at adding verbs to our Christian life. So everybody in here, including myself, we need to keep working on verbs, the action words of the Bible. And we use the book of James as a platform to select certain verbs in different chapters. We're not taking verse for verse study, just looking at the verbs in that, implying it. So I guess many of you know something about James is very important. The book of James, if you read it very much, is the most practical book in the New Testament. It deals with daily problems every chapter, 5 chapters. It's the most practical book in the New Testament, James, for how to live a Christian life. And so we're talking about chapter 5, verse 7. And let me read that first of all, and then we'll go back and look at it closer. Well, let me tell you about the reading first of all. In this reading, it's going to talk about, it starts out, be patient. And I'm going to use the word for patient, the word wait, because waiting is being patient. So I use wait. James uses patience. So he starts out, therefore be patient. And the theme of this paragraph is be patient unto the coming of the Lord. That's the text and what he says. But today, I'm going to talk about the coming of the Lord next week. This week, we'll just talk about waiting and patience. And so that's where we are. So he says here, here's how it reads. Therefore, be patient, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. The farmer waits for the precious produce of the soil, and being patient about it until he gets the early and late rain. You too be patient. Strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is near. Do not complain, brethren, against one another, so that you yourselves may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. As an example, brethren, of what suffering and patience take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. We count them blessed who endure. And you have heard of the endurance of Job, and we've seen the outcome of the Lord's dealings, that the Lord was full of compassion and is merciful. So there's where our study is. So James is going to talk about be patient, right? Or I use the word wait. Same thing. Wait, be patient. And he's going to talk about the theme, though. We're not going to do the theme today of that paragraph, is be patient about the Lord coming again. We're going to take just patience today. And he says in patience, I'm going to give you 3 examples, James says. I'm going to give you an example of the farmer. I'm going to give you an example of the Old Testament prophets. And I'm going to give you an example of Job. And I want you to learn from them and learn how to wait, to be patient. So the problem of life, go ahead, the next slide. We all suffer from weight loss. Do you believe that? Wait means patience. We all suffer. I might overdo this lesson a little bit because I'm talking to myself because I'm not patient at all and I hate to wait. There's no one here, I don't think, maybe. There might be someone here. But if you're worse than I am, you're in bad shape about waiting and patience. So if I'm kind of hard on this, it's on me. I've dealt with this. I'm not sure how old I am, but I've been in life a long time. And I've always dealt with controlling my patience and waiting. And Carmen, if there's one thing she has got on me about most of our whole life, is patience and waiting. That's our biggest deal in life. So we all suffer from weight loss. We don't wait very well, right? And so our culture we live in is kind of like that, though. Our culture bows down to the God of now. We want things done now, right? We don't want it's hard to wait. Everything, I want a quick fix for everything and get rich quick, whatever the quick is, get rich quick, so forth. So you have areas like sports. You know, when you hire a coach for a team, these college teams, professional teams, basketball, soccer, baseball, football, whatever, when they hire a coach, they don't ask that coach and watch him with his 5-year plan. He better start winning now. He's gone, right? They don't wait. You're gone if you can't have a winning team. And in politics, I love our country. I love the freedom we have. We can vote. We can voice our opinion the best we can. I like all that, and I hope everybody in here studies Jesus Christ and studies the Bible principles and look at the candidates and see how they fit Jesus' moral principles and the moral reality the Bible talks about, and you choose a candidate like that. That's what I hope you are doing. And we fuss about politicians, though, don't we? We are impatient with politicians and all the mess that goes on with that. And sometimes we're part of the problem, because what we do is we actually are ones who encourage politicians to do what to us? Actually, the voters encourage politicians, the way the system works, to lie to us. Did you believe that? They'll say, I'll promise this, and I'll do this, and I'm going to do this, and you vote for me, and I'll take care of you, and I'll do all this for you. We encourage them to do all that. It's been going on all the time. Still goes on all the time. Big promises, big lies they tell us. And I'll solve your problems right now. Whatever it is, I'll solve it for you. Vote for me, please. Even so in sports and politics, and even in churches sometimes. You know, in congregations that I've experienced in my life, there are people who show up a few times, attend that church, and decide, they see the problems, they see what they don't like, and that's okay. And the church has been like that for 50, 100 years, but they don't like it, so they go somewhere else. They got patience to work with anybody, they go somewhere else. But whatever, you can talk about patience, examples all you want to, but bottom line is, I, okay? Let me just ask a question. Does anybody here have problems waiting and patience besides me? One. There's two of us in here. Oh, three. There's three. Anybody else? 4, 5, 6. Anybody else? Okay, you 6 people. I'm talking to you and me. I'm one of you 6. 7. That's 7. So I tell you what. We want a 6. We want everything done fast now. You ever had the flu or cold? You want to be cured of it? What do? I want that shot. I want a lot of medication, the CPAP, and I want it done now. I'm not going to wait for all that. So many of us struggle with getting in a hurry. I don't know if maybe only 6 of us here are like this, but you're in your car, you're driving, and up about a quarter mile up, you see cars at a red light. There's 2 cars, 2 lanes, 2 cars, getting ready to go to the red light. So on the way there, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, which car should I get behind? Which one should I choose to get behind to get through the light the quickest? You ever done that? So most of the time I'm wrong. I choose the wrong lane. I'm mad. This guy's slow. So I'm impatient about driving. Now maybe you are too. At a grocery store, how many have experience? You go to the grocery store and you got like 4 or 5 items. You try and get through this express lane. Express lane says 11 items only, and you only be here a while. And you get in this lane, and right in front of you is a guy with a buggy with 45 items. Oh, does that bug you? Have to wait for him to get through all that mess. I've done that. You have too, and you count how many items he has, and you waste your time doing all this stuff like that. You're just upset because you don't want to wait. I don't want to wait. So we're all sicker than we think about patience. James talks about patience and waiting. And everybody deals with that in some way or another. And there's a reason when Domino Pizza started their business, they were known as the fastest delivery in town. And the CEO of Domino Pizza made the point on television one time, says, we don't send pizzas, we send convenience. We're fast, we deliver quickly. And that made them a great, productive, financially solvent company. So, there's something inside every human being, I guess, that every once in a while we want to worship the God of patience. Now, we want it now. And that's been my problem working with churches. I've been to 8, 9, 10 different churches. I get put out with them, no patience, I leave. So that's my big problem. I don't know about your problem at all. Now, why are we like that? Why am I like that? And you know, waiting makes us frustrated. James talks about don't grumble in that James 5. Don't grumble. Well, grumbling leads to a frustration. and too excited about things. So waiting makes us frustrated. And when you get frustrated, you start fussing. You start grumbling. And you blame people. And don't let Carmen speak out about, you be quiet, Carmen, about me. I will tell you one thing. You don't know it now, but I've got machine guns on my steering wheel. I got little buttons I push, and somebody in front of me that don't do right, I'm going, Carmen, I don't think that. Well, I don't know what I heard. I just want to get them out of the way. Anyway, I tell you, patience. James, I wish the Bible didn't talk about that, but it does. Patience. Wait refers to grumbling and a mother was putting her little son to bed one night. She says to the little boy, it says, tomorrow I've got to go to the doctor and your daddy's going to drive you to school. And the little boy said, Mom, I don't like it when Daddy drives me to school. And she said, well, why? He's a good driver. Mommy, every time Daddy takes us to school, there's so many more idiots on the road. You relate to that? And so what we need to do is add weight to our Christian life. Try to hard add weight. And if you don't add weight, you will subtract a lot of important things about your character in your life. So let's talk about that, what James, about patience. Now, many of you here are very patient. I'm sure there's some people here really patient people. You're godly, you're angels, and you're just almost like Jesus Christ. I know that some of you are like that. And so just dismiss this sermon, and the 6 of us will enjoy the lesson, okay? So here's what we're going to talk about. Next slide. God specializes in weight gain. Weight. So, patience. God specializes in weight. Add that verb to your life. It always goes back to what kind of a God you believe in. And I know that. Who is the God you believe in? What's he like? And the Bible talks about he's the great I am. Where'd that phrase come from in the Bible? I am. The great I am. We sing the song, it's in the Bible. Where's it found in the Bible? You remember that? Anybody? God's the great I am. Where'd it come from? Where in the Bible does it say that, I mean? Anybody remember? Nobody remembers? Okay, remember when Moses saw the burning bush in his day, God's talking to him? And one of the things God trying to convince him to go back to Egypt, and God told Moses, I'm the great I am. Just tell him I am sent you. What? Always kind of got me. Tell him I am sent me. Well, that's not going to do much good, I don't think, to the Egyptians. They'll kill me anyway. But the I am, God said, I'm the great I am. And in other words, nothing is impossible to God. Now, how many know that? Raise your hand. We all know nothing's impossible to God. So you're not dealing with anything right now that God couldn't resolve immediately. No one here has anything going on in your life that God has the power, the great I am, to solve that problem immediately, doesn't he? He has that power. And I read the Bible. I know the Bible. I teach the Bible. So why does God slow cook things when I want everything microwaved? You know, if we can't microwave in our house, we don't eat it. Because I want it now. But God slow cooks things. So why is that? Well, here's why. Because God is more concerned about our character than he is our comfort. God's more concerned about who you are. Are you like Jesus Christ? I want your character to be great. He's more concerned about your character than he does about your comfort. And we all know, I guess, maybe some don't, but many people know, every parent should know this, you do not build character in children or a family instantly. It takes time to do that. And we all know, well, I saw a sign in a mall one time that said, ears pierce while you wait. And Carmen was looking at it, really. I just saw it. Ears pierce while you wait. And I saw the word wait, And I'm not going in there. I'm not going to have anything to do with that waiting. But what else could it be? Could you, wait a minute, I'll take my ears off, leave me here, come back in 30 minutes. You can't do that. So it takes time. You got to wait. And most people don't like to wait that much. So some things you can only do by waiting. There are a lot of things in life. You can only do it by having patience, by waiting. That's life is. And that's why a good father and a good mother will never give their child everything they want, everything they ask for, as soon as they want it, as soon as it's immediately gratification. That's why most parents don't do that to children. At least you shouldn't do that to children. Because what does that produce? When you instantly give people what they want, what does that do for them? A lot of people anyway. What does that produce in a child?
Impatience.
Who's got it?
Impatient.
Yeah, they don't learn patience, one thing. Yeah. And it's worse than that, though. It's worse than that. That produces a spoiled child. You got a little brat on your hands. It's cute for about 4, 5, 6 years. It's cute. It gets worse when it gets older, right? You don't want to spoil your children. You don't want bratty, immature children. Now, Arkansas is born in Arkansas, and saying down there I heard early is, you give a pig and a boy all they want, and you know what you'll get? You'll get a fat pig, a good pig, and you have a poor kid, a rotten, spoiled kid. I've always heard that. My parents believe that too, by the way. And we always heard that. So we have a good Father in heaven, don't we? I pray driving home, in the office, everywhere. Our Father in heaven, I start out. We have a good Father in heaven who will He'll let us go through temporary pain and suffering in this life. He will let that happen to mankind for eternal gain. So the Bible says this. He says, I'll do more than you ask. Ephesians 3:20. Look at that top verse. Now to him who is able, that's God. To him is able to do far more abundantly than we can ask or think. God's able to do more than we ask or think according to the power that works within us. That's what the Bible talks about and says that, right? Everybody got it? You can't argue with it. You can't dismiss it. It's there. That's what God says. But he will never do more than we ask and do all we want. He'll never do that. God will never give me or you all you want in life. Because he cares more about your character, building a Jesus Christ image person. He cares more about your character than he does your comfort. And so in James 1:3, you keep on reading James, he says, well, the first part of James says, for you know that the testing of your faith produces what? What does testing your faith? And testing your faith is about suffering. It's about things happen to you. All kinds of things happen to you. That's a test. So what does that do to people? The testing of your faith produces what? Illnesses, troubles, accidents, diseases, hardships, suffering, all are planted, but they are going to produce. God said they're going to produce something. What do they produce? Steadfastness. Right? That's what the Bible teaches. They're going to produce steadfastness. And then he says this, and let steadfastness have its full effect. Hang in there, stay in there, and this stay with it, stand up. It'll have an effect on your life, a good effect on your life, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Now that might not be in this life, but it may be in this life. But that's God's promise if you believe the Bible. So the first chapter of James, he starts out that way. In James 5 verse 3, he'd say, let's see, that's on here? Yeah, 5:3. Not only that, but we rejoice in our suffering. Now, how you like that little phrase in the Bible? How many here really love that? We rejoice in suffering. I wish he had to put that in there. But he says, you rejoice in suffering. So if you're having a heart attack or you have a cancer, are you going to be rejoicing in that? Well, no, we don't. We're not too happy about that. We're fearful. We're scared, right? But he still says, I don't care what you think, what you're thinking, it'll make a difference what you think. He says, but we rejoice in our suffering, knowing that suffering also produces. What does suffering produce? Endurance. And that may be in the future, heaven, or it may be in life. But either way, suffering produces. You plant suffering, you plant diseases, heart attacks, high blood pressure, you name all the things wrong with us, and everybody in here's got something. How many here have something wrong with you? Well, there's a couple of younger people here. You're not, but everybody over what? I don't know. Everybody's got something wrong with them, right? And everybody stand up and tell me what's wrong with you. We'd take all day, right? So we're all in that. And this is a practical book. We're all in that. So let me tell you a little secret. Are you ready for this? Unknown secret of the world that I had never heard before. Now listen carefully. I'm going to whisper this. I don't want to get out of this room. Are you listening? You are not in control. Do you hear that? You are not in control. Now keep that secret to yourself. You don't control your life. How many know that? Well, a lot of hands go up in here today. I know we don't control our life. I understand that. So, we don't choose our circumstances, do we? You don't choose to be paralyzed, or you don't choose to have heart attacks. You don't choose to have cancer. We don't get to choose our circumstances, but you always get to choose how you react to those things. And a Christian knows how to react to suffering. They know it's going to produce something great one day. And you can't choose what happens to you, but you can choose how you react to it. That's what God says all through the Bible. And that's why he talks about sometimes you've got to add some weight, patience. You've got to add weight to your life, patience to your life, which is very, very difficult, adding patience. Now, he says in this illustration, he says, farmers know that. He says, the prophets of old knew that. And he says, Job knows that. And here's what he says. And number two, first one's the farmer. The farmer, next slide, teaches us to wait actively. Active. Wait, have patience, wait actively. Right? Farmers teach that to everybody. God said, I use a farmer to teach you how to wait, how to have patience. And wait is not a passive verb. Wait doesn't mean just do nothing. It's not a passive verb. Wait doesn't mean to do nothing. And every farmer in the world, every gardener, everybody that gardens understands this. Farmers wait for God, right? They break ground, they plant, they fertilize, they water. They do all kinds of things waiting for God to do what he does. Grow the crop. Send the rain. Send the atmosphere. Send the weather. Farmers are patiently waiting for God to do what they do. But that doesn't mean they do nothing. Farmers do things. You know, they fertilize, they insecticide the fields, and they do a lot of things. All kinds of things farmers have to work at daily, all the time. And they do what they can. James makes his point. Farmers do whatever they can. They're very active, and they wait for God to do his part. That's what James talks about. How many of you here are students of the bamboo tree? No one. I knew that. I looked it up and studied it this past week, looking up things. You know, the bamboo, there's all kinds of species and different levels of how they work. But anyway, in general, this happens. I read about this one in China, one of the plants, and it has a name to it. I don't know the name. But the farmer plants a seed, and he waters it and fertilizes it. And for 1 year, they don't see anything. Nothing happens for a whole year. Nothing happens. The second year, they water it, fertilize it. They see nothing that happens to that little sprout. It doesn't sprout. Third year, you believe it? Go look it up. The third year, they still water it and fertilize it, and nothing happens. For 4 years, nothing happens. On the fifth year, a sprout breaks forth out of the ground. This is fantastic. A sprout comes out of the ground and starts to grow, and in 30 days, it's 30 feet high. Isn't that amazing? They wait. This piece I'm talking about in 30 days is 30 feet high. Now, some bamboo, if you go and look at the internet, grows as far high as 151 feet, they said. There's some big, tall bamboo out there. But that's not the point. Right now, what makes a difference to you and I is, right now, in your life, something needs to happen. I don't care who you are in here, how old you are, your life right now, you need something to happen good in your life. You want that, you pray about it, and it's not happening. And people I've talked to in my life, I have too, Carmen, we both talk, we've been praying for years and years, nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. So what do you need to be doing while nothing's happening? Well, like the farmer, look at James. And Paul, is Paul on there? No, example is Acts 16. Paul is on missionary tour. Listen, this is great. Paul, he's in the region of Phrygia and Galatia, and there the Holy Spirit forbids him to go to the next town. That's Acts 16, verse 6. The Holy Spirit says, no, Paul, you're not going where you want to go. So he leaves that. He goes to Mysia. And they attempt to go to Bithynia. And again, God says, the Spirit of the Lord said, you're not allowed to go there either. Now, he's a missionary. He's traveling town to town to town. And twice God tells him in Acts 16, verse 6, 7, and 8, 9, twice God says, no, you're not going there. I forbid, you're not going there. And I guess Paul is very patient because he did things later on. And so Paul doesn't just get in his rocking chair and sit and do nothing. He goes to Torres. And Torres, he did a lot of great things in the city of Torres. And in other words, God said, don't go here, don't go there. Twice he said that. But you can go, and he takes off, and the text reads, and when Paul had seen the vision, immediately he sought to go into Macedonia, concluding that God has called us to preach the gospel to them also. Now that basically means that Paul gets to go to Europe. First time the gospel goes to Europe in that chapter, right? So all the time Paul went to Torres and preached and did a lot of things. God said, you can't go here, you can't go there. So he went over here and did some things. And finally he said, okay, you can go now. Go to the Macedonian call. And that was the first time the gospel goes to Europe. Example. So that's the story of how he says the farmer teaches us to wait actively. Two more things real quickly, and that is the next slide says Job. No, number two. Did I get back up? Did I leave one out? Oh, there it is. The number two is the next big. The prophets teach us to wait purposefully. What does that mean in the Bible? James says, look at the prophets. How do prophets talk about patience? Well, here's what he's talking about the prophets of old. He's talking about verse 10. He says, as an example of suffering and patience, brothers, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. So James talks about prophets who were preachers and spoke the Lord's name. And so James, these people know this, and you know it too. He brings up the idea these prophets in the Old Testament endured great hardships and suffering, even their lives, to preach the gospel. So he brings up prophets to learn how to wait. And yet they had patient endurance. And he says, take these for examples. And Jeremiah was one of the prophets among many that had problems. Jeremiah, if you don't know about his life, he endured all kinds of mistreatment. He was put in stocks. Jeremiah 22, he was put in prison in chapter 32:2, and he was put into a dirty, miry dungeon in chapter 30. Jeremiah went through all these, but he endured. And James says, I want you to look at the farmer, I want you to look at the prophets, and I'm teaching you how to live your life. And sometimes we learn from that bad things happen to good people. Everybody know that? Bad things happen to good people. But it's true, equally true, that the people in this life who inspired you the most are people who did not have it very easy. Right? You know people that have it horrible difficulties, and you're inspired by that? I have a history of people I've known in my travels that were terrible condition, and I admired them. They inspired me to do better. One young man, a teenager in Ohio, he wasn't a member of the church, but he came with his girlfriend to church, and he had, I don't know which arm, I can't remember which arm, but one of his arm was tore off by a hay baler. He only had one arm, this teenager. And boy, he did everything. He still worked, picked up bales of hay with one hand, he still worked. That was inspiration to watch that. Had a girl in Hialeah, Florida, she had legs amputated above the knee in her life. And she got around and she helped churches and did all kinds. How many people do you know that had all kinds of difficulties, but they inspired you? They inspired you more than someone normal, right? Who knows somebody like that? I could go all day talking about people I've known that had great tragedies, but they lived a great Christian life and inspired me a lot. And I'll never forget them. Carmen, we talk about that. What's some more real quick? I can't.
You're putting me on the spot.
Okay, she can't remember either. You know anybody that was, let's see, inspired you that had great difficulties? Anybody have a story like that?
Diane.
Oh, Diana Kimpro in Fort Pierce. She was crippled on one side. He wasn't paralyzed, but she's badly crippled in her right side. And she was helped with her secretary work at the office every day, helped me in every possible way. It's just amazing what she did. She's a good friend still on Facebook. That was 40 years ago. And she had great difficulties getting around and great difficulties doing things, but she inspired me. She gave me a book one time about inspiration. And I thought, well, that's her, all right. That's good. But anyway, there are people you know probably that have great difficulties that turn to be great Christians. And I could go on and on about that, and I'm not making it point anymore because it's so true. And the reason their life endures in my heart is because of what they did and how they acted as a Christian, how they overcome those things and waited for God. So, you see, waiting, patience demands waiting on the goodness of God. How many knows Psalms 33:20? I was going to make a plaque and give everybody a little plaque, but I didn't make it. Here's Psalms 33. Our souls wait for the Lord. He is our help and our shield. For our heart is glad in him because we trust in his holy name. Let your steadfast love, O Lord, be upon us even as we hope in you. Let the steadfast love of God be upon us, that our hope is tied with you. There's a hope for Christians right there. And so you will fail, listen carefully, you will fail as a waiter. I don't mean a servant, I mean as a person who waits. You will fail as a waiter unless you're convinced 100% that God's love never fails. And instead of saying, why me? Why me, Lord? Why am I struck down? Why I have this trouble? Why me? Start saying, God, what's going on? What's your plan, God? What do you want me to do with this, God? And someday, God is going to do something for you if you wait well. God will bless you one day if you wait well. James 1 verse 12, that's what the Bible says. It says, you have heard of the steadfastness of Job, and you have, blessed is the man, right? Is that on the screen? James 1:12. Blessed is the man, happy is a man or woman who remain steadfast under trial. That's suffering. Blessed are you and me if we remain steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised. God's promise for those who love him, right? Job, time's gone. I guess should I wait? I won't know. Job had, everybody knows Job, I hope. A lot of problems. Everything's lost. Lost everything. But God came back and said, I promise to be with you always, no matter what happens. And I'm going to tell you a little story that happened. Years ago, I lived in Calhoun, Kentucky, and we had a softball team. I was the coach of the softball team we had, and we played right there by where we live, a half mile away from the church was a field. And our son was 2, 3 years old. I'm not sure how old, 3.5. I'm not sure how old he was. But Carmen had to stay home that night with the twins. They were just born kind of like, and so we all went. I had to take Johnny with me to softball, play softball in the game. So we're there in the game, and it's nighttime. Plenty of lights, and overlooking the field was a little knoll, a little hill, and everybody put their blankets on that little hill and watched the ball game. There's bleachers on this side. So here's Johnny. I take him over to this little hill that overlooks the field. I said, Johnny, he's only like 3 years old or 4 or whatever he is. I said, Johnny, here's a blanket. You stay right here and don't go anywhere. And I promise to come back and get you. I promise. I'll get you a little later on. So, real short story. The game's over. We won. The guys are all excited, talking what all happened and relaying the plays and having a big time and rejoicing. And I leave and go home, and I get to the house, and Carmen says, where's Johnny? Wow, I panicked too. I left him at the softball field on that hill. It was nighttime. And I go back, I hurried, run back to the field. It's only a half mile away from our house. And it's totally dark. All the lights are gone out there. It's totally dark. I go over the hill. And I'm walking down here with a flashlight, looking for Johnny. And there, 34, there he is, just sleeping on the hill, asleep. On that pad I left him. Woke him up. Said, John, time to go home. Well, where you been, Dad? Said, well, I promised to come back and get you. Now here I am. I promised to get you, so I got him. And I just said, I'm happy you are where I left you. I'm glad you didn't go nowhere. You didn't run off, and that's good. So when Daddy says you wait here, you do it right. You do that right. And I'll always come back and get you. So when Daddy makes a promise, he's going to keep it. Now, I'm telling you that story because God's like that. He's our Daddy, our Father in heaven. When he makes a promise, he's going to keep it. I don't care how bad everything's life gets. If you're left out in the cold field by yourself as a 3-year-old, God, that's a true story. I'm not lying. Don't zap me. It's a true story, right, Carmen?
Right.
And I can tell you all the story is better than that. I didn't have time for it. I mean, she gets irate at me. Where's Johnny? I won't go into all that. That's good enough. Okay. We're done. Thank you for looking at that. That's all of James 4. Next week, we're going to take the real context of that verse is about the Lord coming. We'll talk about the Lord's coming next week.